Kenny McIntosh has quietly had a pretty productive season for the Georgia Bulldogs, and no, it's not on the level of past Georgia running backs. They're on the level of all of the running backs in the SEC, and we do know that really great running backs come through the SEC. But I think his importance has gone a little bit unnoticed. What he does in the receiving game, the rushing game, the versatility that he holds in a running back room that people have deemed it probably is the weakest running back room Georgia's had in, I don't know, maybe since 2011, 2012, just as far as talent and production goes. But he has taken the touches that he has been given and done well with them, and he's done some things that not a lot of Georgia running backs have done, especially in the receiving game. I believe he is top 5 or 6 in the country in receiving yards for running backs, so that's gone unnoticed for sure. The way that they use him in quick outs and in the receiving game is an extension of Georgia's run game, according to Kirby Smart, and that's what Kenny McIntosh brings to the table. He is by far the best receiving back on this Georgia roster. Branson Robinson, Dejan Edwards, and Kendall Milton are all capable running backs, but Kenny McIntosh is by far the most capable receiver of the bunch, and he's been that. He had almost 300 receiving yards last year as the number 3 running back on the roster, and this year he has over 300 as the number 1 running back on the roster. And there's still potentially 5 more games to play, right? They've played 11, 4 more games to play. There's potentially 4 more games to play if they go all the way. So he could definitely tack on to those numbers. Ryan Curley from DawgSTRUCTION here talking about Kenny McIntosh and what he has done in college football this year and what he brings to the table for the Georgia Bulldogs. Make sure you're checking out DAWGSTRUCTION. Links down below for that. And we have a limited number of Kelee Ringo-Signed DAWGSTRUCTIONs. We had our event with him on Sunday. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people showed up. If you got a ticket, you can get a Kelee Ringo-Signed DAWGSTRUCTION. There's not that many of them. But we do have some, and it'd be a great Christmas gift. So check it out. Click that link down below if you want to purchase that. Had a lot of fun with Kelee. Enjoyed talking to him off the record and things like that. So, Kenny, let's look at his numbers this year. 111 carries for 568 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns. 33 catches for 341 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. If you go through game by game, you see the problem. I think, as great as it would be for Georgia to win to have a player that wins the Heisman Trophy, or even as a finalist, that hasn't happened in a long time. They spread the ball around so much at this point because of the depth of their weapons and all. I mean, you got Brock Bowers out there, Ladd McConkey, A.D. Mitchell. You got 3 or 4 running backs that are getting touches. Darnell Washington's out there. You got Kiersh Jackson. So they spread the ball around to these guys. So it's somewhat difficult for a player to get crazy numbers on this Georgia team because it truly is a team and not just a couple players that are dominating. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but take Jamison Williams or Jordan Addison, for example, guys like that. Georgia doesn't have players that get that productive. They haven't, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift had a really productive year. So they haven't had that in a while, and I don't think they're going to necessarily have that as long as they keep playing this type of football, which allows them to win games in whatever way they really want to. I've talked about that a lot, how they control football games. But Kenny McIntosh reaps the benefit of that sometimes. Against Oregon, only touched the ball 5 times just as far as carries go, and he had a touchdown on the ground. 9 catches for 117 yards in that game. They had a game plan, and that involved Kenny McIntosh getting out quickly and Stetson Bennett getting the ball out to him quickly. And that is what Kirby called an extension of their run game, when they're able to do those quick outs to the backs. Those are essentially runs because half the time the ball's being caught behind the line of scrimmage anyway. He brings that to the table, a way that the rest of the running backs don't, in a way that makes it hard to defend the Georgia Bulldogs, because if you load the box because you think they're going to hand it off, well, they can dump it off really quick, and Kenny McIntosh can get a quick first down. It's just, I'm not some football genius, but the nuances of football, I do understand some of it. That is an example of why he is dangerous. He's top 20. He's like number 17 or 18 in the SEC in rushing yards. It's not crazy because you've got Dejan Edwards, who's right behind him in rushing yards. You got Kendall Milton and Branson Robinson, and Stetson Bennett carries the ball sometimes as well. So they, it's not a quarterback that's just dropping back every time. He does take off sometimes. That feeds into what Kenny McIntosh be doing. But this last week, in a game where the weather dictated some of the game plan, a really physical game they were playing against Kentucky. Can you have a running back that's a bell cow if you're not passing the ball? Well, they haven't really had a bell cow game all year. Yeah, Branson Robinson and Dejan Edwards, they went off against Auburn, but that was like on 12 to 15 carries. Can you get a guy 20 to 25 touches and make him a true bell cow in a game? And guess what? That's what happened with Kenny McIntosh against Kentucky this past Saturday. 19 carries for 143 yards. That was the best in his career, and a touchdown. He also caught 2 passes for 19 yards. So he showed, when they did pass the ball, he was an available target. So McIntosh is one of those running backs that can kind of do what's asked of him. Okay, we're going to give you 20 carries. Here you go. Well, what was the result against a really solid defense, or at least a physical defense? 143 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Against Oregon, a fast team with a lot of athletes in that linebacker room and that defensive line, McIntosh, we want you to basically be a receiver. Okay, nine catches for 117 yards. And so you've seen throughout the year a mix and match. Against Florida, he was very important. He fumbled in the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. Fumbled, came in and ran like a crazy man. He was running really hard. That's the hardest I've seen any Georgia running back really go at it this year, was the end of the game against Florida. He has 16 carries for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging over 5 yards a carry. Last week he averaged 7.5 a carry. Against Florida he averaged 5.6 a carry. Those were his 2 most productive games on the ground. And it's not, Zamir White and James Cook, for example, were 2 running backs that are probably going to end up with more productive seasons than him. McIntosh will end up with a more productive season than Zamir White did last year total because of the receiving game. But White gets 856 yards on 160 carries. On 113 carries, James Cook finishes with 728 yards. These are in 15 games. McIntosh, in 11 games so far, has the 568 and the 341. So he can finish more productive than they did, with potentially 4 more games left. Definitely 3 more games left because they have Tech. They have the SEC Championship, and they have a bowl game, whether that's a playoff game or the Sugar Bowl. I think it's going to be a playoff game. It's almost written in the stars, apparently, if you ask people. But McIntosh can do it all, really. And I think that's gone a little bit unnoticed just because this isn't one of those running back rooms that just pops out at you with a superstar back. They haven't had a true superstar since DeAndre Swift left. But McIntosh getting it done in a lot of ways for the Dogs. Make sure you're checking out the links down below. DoorDash is down below. Kelee Ringo-Signed books. Or if you just want the book, all of that, you can check it out down below. We'll see you at the site, dawgpost.com.